Lori, oh my goodness. We are finally catching up. So I have to just start this by saying my children and I love children's picture books. However, yours is the only book that I have bought, not just one, not two, not three, but four copies of the
Oh my
same
gosh,
series.
Sherry. That's
Uh,
really kind of you.
it is, and I would hold it up, but I literally don't have it because it's at my four Codezilla camps.
I happen to have one.
How perfect. How perfect. I loved your storybook, and I know there's a story behind it. I would love for you to tell us what was the impetus behind you've lived the dream. You're on everyone's bucket list to publish a book, and you did it. Why?
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. So it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll kind of start at the end and then go back to the beginning. I'm not an author, rather, I'm someone who wanted to start a powerful conversation. And it seemed to me that a children's book would be a fantastic vehicle for reaching families and supporting them through that conversation, which research has told me is either very tricky or non-existent for families. And so I wanted to build this as a bridge, as a support, and I'll tell you the backstory. So we have been a family. I have a husband and two teenage sons. We are from Toronto. We lived in London for 4 years, and now we've lived in Chicago for the past 8. And so we have moved mostly in support of my husband's job. And every time we move, we need to sort of reestablish like our foundational principles and our guiding family documents. And every time we need new wills and new insurance and new everything. I was really leading the sort of after, as you know, a long career in marketing was my sort of first paid work. I worked for Kraft Foods and Four Seasons hotels and resorts, which was a dream job until I had a baby, and then it became really complicated because of the travel requirements. And so I kind of went headfirst into the economy of care, into unpaid labor and heading up my family and contributing to my community in significant ways. And part of that was moving our family internationally twice. And it was kind of surprisingly like a role that I really thrived in, this kind of unpaid work of care and of nurturing and of community. And it really helped actually establish us in these new cities. Because the way to make new friends and to form these sort of establishing bonds are to get involved in like, charity work or working at the school, PTA, whatever. So I loved it actually, and my kids were thriving. Our family was doing great. And when we landed in Chicago, after me playing this role for, 5 years at the time, but like upwards of a decade at the time that I really kind of started my work here, we were looking for new insurance. And Kevin, life insurance, and my husband said to me, we should really look into getting you disability insurance because, we've moved to this place, we have no safety net, we have no family, we don't have any friends yet. If God forbid something happens to you, he said he would have to leave work to head up the family. That's how much we value this work. And I said, okay, great. Yeah, let's do it. And so I filled in all the forms and did the health exams and whatever, only for the insurance agent to say to me, I don't understand. You're just a housewife. Why do you need insurance? And it took me aback. And he said, listen, we don't value homemakers that high. Like it doesn't fall on our algorithm. And it was one of those like cartoon moments where the flames are coming out of your nose and the smoke's coming out of your ears and you just can't unhear it. And it was this massive, like curtain falling reveal about the devaluing, the societal devaluing of care, of unpaid labor,
Yep.
which, I know to be the work that makes all other work possible. But what this guy was revealing to me was, no, 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 we don't actually count that. We don't talk about that. And it caused me to really like take a step back and start to write about, read about, study about this kind of like endemic thing, right? The devaluation of care. And I took a course at Stanford called Motherhood and Work, where I learned, it's a great course where like I really learned about sort of the societal framework of this issue. And then I became involved with Eve Rodsky, who wrote a fabulous book called Fair Play, which is really like a gender equity manifesto and like a rebranding of the value of care and domestic work. And I studied to become a trained facilitator with Eve and a family coach. And what I was constantly realizing is that there was sort of a lot of support for moving the equity conversation at the government level, at the corporate level, and even at the sort of partnership level with this book, Fair Play. But really, foundationally, if we want to change like the future, we have to start with kids. And nobody was talking to kids about reshaping and reframing like how we look at care, how we get involved in care, how we value care. And I thought, okay, I was 10 years as a, stay-at-home mom, right? I was very involved in my kids' schools and in kids' charities. Like I know how to talk to kids. And I decided in that moment to write this book.
Wow. So, I mean, two things. First of all, I have also been in those shoes where I was also the underemployed stay-at-home mom, freelancing marketing on the side before I started Codezilla. And I remember when I went to the bank um, I think I needed a loan, and I was listed as a homemaker. I remember thinking, I actually run a business on the side that employs
Right.
12 to 15 young adults every summer. We're a six-figure business. But just then, when it came time, like your comment about the algorithm,
Yeah.
you don't even show up. So that I can relate to intensely. But what I can't relate to and where I bow down to you, you weren't just irritated. You took action and you actually did something about it to the point where you wrote a book, you did a course, you network, you're creating a movement. Most people, Lori, cannot say they have ever done that. What is your drive to make this happen?
Oh my gosh. To be honest, this is such a like really humbling question, but I think I really credit my first paid career in marketing and in branding with giving me the confidence to be a messenger in this way.
Wow.
I genuinely feel that my training at craft and so much of it was in the creation of meaningful and compelling messages around around a cause, and also the tons of work that we did in rebranding and reframing. It gave me the confidence to know that I could have an impact here. And it's that career combined with my decade in providing care and like in the marrow of my bones, understanding the value and impact of that really combined to sort of like catapult me into this 2.0. And also it was this insurance agent who I was like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, you're sitting there and you're like pleated Dockers with your Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and you're gonna tell me that I have no value? Like, no, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, the work that is held by, to the degree of 80% plus, of a value of 12.5 billion hours and $10.9 trillion globally annually is all about.
Yes.
And, it was just knowing like how exhausted I was and how like finding out that the GDP doesn't count this work because it's unpaid and just like all these things. And I really felt it like so personally and on behalf of so many other incredible women that I see in service of their families from dawn till dusk, like, and their communities giving and giving and giving and giving, and to just have that guy in my head saying, "Oh no, like we don't count that because it's not connected to revenue." I was like, "No, this has to change." And also, Sherry, finding in my sort of research and in starting to roll out my own message that there were already so many brilliant, mostly women,
Yeah.
talking about this and trying to grow the movement. And so there was something for me to join, which has been like so beyond fulfilling, and so energizing and so motivating. And I feel like we're just getting started.
It's funny, we're just getting started, yet this goes back to the beginning of time,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
With childcare, looking after the home. So I admire your um, synopsis of passion and planning because I didn't disclaim that I know you from Craft Canada because we were both marketers. And
We
I will
were.
often claim craft is why I was able to grow Codezilla so quickly because I'm not a
Oh.
techie. I will bring down your website before I put it back up. But I generally say, because people have often asked me for advice, how did I grow so quickly? And I'll say it's the three M's, but one of the M's is I'm a mom-run business and
Hmm.
I'm out marketed thanks to craft. But mainly it's I understand moms and understand where you're coming from because other moms appreciated how I spoke to them and how I talked to them and they related to the messaging versus talking down to them like a lot of
That's
techies.
it.
But to your point about the passion, that is still the driver because we all have sometimes it's the negative things that drive us further and faster, more furiously than the everyday happy things. So I'd
Yeah.
love to dive deeper into, okay, so there's this movement, you're channeling into it, but what do we do with our family? Like I've said in email prior, I wish I you had your book 3 years prior because my kids are older than yours. My two daughters are older, and I
Never too late. I
never
promise you. Promise you it's never too late.
Well, I'm going to ask you later on about advice for older,
Yeah.
pre-university kids because we're now
Yeah.
too cool for school. And I think we're past the picture book, Lori. So I might need
Well,
the swipe version.
I know this looks like a book for young kids, but I really position it as a book for families. And I have had some people say to me, I'm getting that for my teenager and just like leaving it, or we're gonna read it together because
Okay.
ostensibly what it is it's a spark
Yep.
for powerful conversations. And even if it just gets you thinking about, how with two older daughters you want to frame it for you, then it's done its job. And you asked how we start, and really what I encourage the families that I coach and when I'm speaking to audiences, it's the nucleus of this is your family values
Yep.
and connecting on your family values. The beauty of this is that even though the sort of problem is societal, the solution is within our own families because we can decide to be whatever we want. I mean, to the degree that we're, following like legal rules and community guidelines, but it's really all about connecting, taking the time to connect and to talk about what is truly important for your family. And this is going to be different for every family, right? Because we all have sort of like different ways we were raised, different cultural connections. Families are wired differently, even within our families, everybody's wired so differently. And so what's really important is coming together, and I suggest it's like in a family meeting style, but not a heavy thing, right? Have snacks, do it at a time when people don't feel stressed or pulled elsewhere. And just say, like, the opportunity for us here is to have a reset and not only to hone in on the things that are important to us, but to identify some things that are crowding us that are actually not important that
Mm,
we can release because that frees up space to really focus on what is meaningful. And when you as a family can identify your values, the offshoot of that are your standards.
yep.
And the standards can also be whatever you want them to be. You can be like, at the type A level, and aspiring to be Martha Stewart, or you can say, we don't actually care. Like we take our garbage out when it's due every week, but otherwise, like we don't care about making our beds. Like we leave the dishes, overnight. We don't care, but like we've talked about it, right? And we agree and we are all comfortable with, how things are going to work with our family. And then the third thing is really how you divide labor within a family, and that's partnered with how you value labor in a family. Right now, as I mentioned before, the work of care is weighted very, very heavily to women. And the research that measured that really was obviously only can measure the executional elements of care, the stuff that we see. What we know is that there are sort of two other big parts to care, the mental labor and the emotional labor, which women carry, even more of. And it's impacting our wellness. And it's not a sustainable model that society expects women to be the main purveyors of care. And Sherry, this is the case even when women are the primary breadwinner of the family. They still
Really?
carry, yes, they're still expected to carry the bulk of care. And so a conversation around, look, these are not chores, and I'll talk more about this. This is actually like how we express gratitude for all that we have and for those with whom we share a space, and we're all a part of it. And in order for this family to be well, we all need to be a part of it. And as it relates to your daughters, they're going to be going off on their own soon. It's really important that they know like how to stay well, and caring for themselves is really a big part of that. I have a funny story I saw online about a mom who dropped her son off at college, and on the first day she like helped him, she made his bed and she stuck a $20 bill underneath the fitted sheet, and when she went to pick him up at the end of the year, the bill was still there.
I knew where this was going before I heard the punchline. I think I dated that guy. Back in college, back in college. Wow, Lori, there's so much you shared. So, first of all, I have to just say, you're the only person that I've ever seen, and I read a lot, by the way. I'm a very well-read person. The only individual I've seen describe family as the most important team and the home as the most important organization. And that
I
really.
have to say I got that from Eve Rodsky. Full credit to
Oh,
Eve.
okay, okay. Well, full credit to
Yes.
her, but you were smart enough to put it at the very front of your website because I thought to myself, as someone who reads business books and leadership books, I have read endless books about family and home, but rarely, if ever, do we talk about it from a family perspective. It's more about business, sports, leadership,
Right.
organization, optimization, never from the nucleus. And to your point, your family values, the principles that you have to align to. What are some tips you have to help decide what are your family values? Like, was that a democratic process or was it top down from you and your husband?
Okay, so that's such a great question. And I think, you and I are coming from a generation that was maybe like kind of highly driven by the like because I said so.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
right.
yeah.
And so what I'm trying to cultivate for families is an environment of like because we agreed to. And this is why I think even young children can participate in these conversations, right? Because they're able to express what feels safe for them, what feels comfortable for them, what feels overwhelming for them, what their capacity is. And so when you talk about your home as a team, it's the spaces that you share. It's the spaces that, maybe if your kids have their own room, that it really feel like their own personal space. Um, Again, we're running through life every day so quickly. We don't often have a chance to have these conversations. So this intentional chatting about and reflecting on when we come into our space, what makes us feel good? What makes us feel stressed? And your values are revealed through these conversations. And it's really important that children have a voice in these conversations because when they have a stake in setting the standards, they are more likely to maintain the standards. It's a very similar lesson to what we learned at Craft, which was when you involve children in the procurement and preparation of food,
Wait,
they
wait.
are more likely to eat it.
Yeah, that, oh my goodness, what a great parallel. I love how you brought it full circle. That is so true. So, my family actually, we instigated, we call them fam jams.
Love
And
it.
yeah, thank you. I'm I think it's a smart. I'm just embarrassed we only started doing it a year ago, and it's not faithfully done every Sunday. I literally have it booked in my Google Calendar. But what um, my youngest daughter, who's now 14, said, so she in a way instigated it. She observed when we were in holidays as a family and the Airbnb, we would all gather together aside from eating. We'd gather together in the living room of the rental. And even if we were reading or on our device or like separate yet together, because that's kind
Yeah.
of unfortunately the way the world is. We're not all playing board games and we're
Yeah.
not always after you eat dinner and you wash up. That's the downtime or before dinner. And she actually commented, and this is a kid who doesn't say a lot, so when she talks, I listen,
Yeah.
that we kind of had more of a bond on holiday. Well, we can't afford to go on holiday all year round. And so that was the impetus to say, how do I replicate this back home? And I have to say, it's harder when we're not on holiday because they don't want to come into the room and they don't want to gather together. Do you have any tips, or is it like back to your point? This is the law. We have an hour, 60 minutes of fam jam time. What's happening in school? Because they'll just say, well, that's dinner time. And I'm trying to make it a separate 60 minutes, only 60 minutes for my too cool for school high schooler, to see the value in this.
So you just raised like the most critical and central point of all of this. And really, when I start coaching with families or at a speaking engagement, whatever, the first thing I make clear is that actually the big opportunity here, it's not about the work and the tasks and the jobs and the chores. The ultimate goal is to have a family team where everybody has equal rest, equal joy, equal time for connection, equal time for creative pursuits or exercise or whatever it is that nourishes you and fills your cup. And that is the starting point from which the ideal division of labor will fall. And when I help people get to the division of labor, the key idea is full task ownership, because what full task ownership from, inception to planning to execution does is it actually reduces the amount of time that it takes to do a task, but also, and talk to you more about this, it reduces stress. It reduces the resentment that often creeps in from the weight of the work of care. And so your daughter will find that the feeling that she had in that Airbnb is actually what we're striving for in the home. And of course, like, let's be clear, this work is heavy. It's a lot. We're racing through life. It's overwhelming. We're not like, we're not turning 180, right?
Yeah.
But you do feel the weight is lighter, the connections are stronger, the stress is reduced when you kind of follow this model.
Yeah, no, I can see that. So let's talk a little bit more, if we can, about the chores and the delineation of chores based on interest. Because the baseline is I don't want to do it at all,
Sure.
which is not part of the family values as you talked about. So how do you delegate, delineate based on like I've got two daughters, but that's all they have in common. They are two totally different humans. They
For
like
sure.
literally exact opposite food, exact opposite style, and exact opposite chores.
So the first thing to consider, of course, is, you want kids to be engaged in things that are safe and age appropriate. And a lot of the time people are saying to me, well, what's good for a 4-year-old? What's good for a 7-year-old? And the reality is that every kid is so different. Again, we talked about wiring, we talked about capacity, we talked about interests. So, you know your own kids and, use your judgment, but what works for me and my family is recognizing your child's strengths and matching to those, recognize their passions and match to those. So I have one kid who's very sort of a linear thinker, very organized. He's my guy who helps me unload the groceries and, put stuff away in the pantry.
Nice.
Then I have another one who really loves music and he's motivated by listening to music. So he does the things like vacuuming or whatever, where he can have his headphones on, and that kind of makes the time go faster. You know, if you have a child who maybe thrives more with like a partner or a shadow, then something like laundry is really a great one where they can come in with a parent and do it, or yard work where they can partner with a parent and do
Yeah.
it. Um, and you know, I want to just say there's a lot of research to show that getting kids involved in the work of home and tasks of care as young as 3 will impact them so positively. I mean, starting then, but also later in life, both in their academic success, in personal relationships, and just in their own feeling of sort of pride and accomplishment. And also, you know, knowing how to report back, or knowing how to ask questions, or knowing how to ask for help, or knowing how to say, hey, this
Right.
is actually not working for me. This is too hard. I need support, whatever. And these are all great skills to learn in this kind of environment.
They are. And even going beyond the family, I can't help but think about my second family are all of my Codezilla campers and my staff. And
Yes.
Lori, I have literally changed my curriculum for the kiddies because I have seen my young adults from, senior high school to early university. They lack some of the skills you just said. I don't know about their bed sheets
Interesting.
and the $20
Yep.
bill, but I do know judgment, being able to articulate, to speak up, the confidence to speak up.
Yep.
Um, they often just don't. I have a pretty aggressive hiring process, but I would say from what I've seen, even when I teach part-time at university, some students really, really struggle with what I would call very rudimentary decisions, very rudimentary, i.e., do I use a pen or a pencil? Uh,
Yep.
Even though I'll often say it's one page, you decide how you lay it out. Um, you know, can I have a title page? Like just questions that to me are just so trivial, but then I go back and I think they are so used to coloring within the lines
Yep.
that they haven't cultivated within their family network
Yep.
the ability to be responsible. And if you're not responsible for very rudimentary things in the house, it must be really daunting when you leave the house, even in the bubble of university or
Yes.
the summer job.
Yep. And also to make clear for your listeners here, getting kids involved in the tasks of home is not about perfection. It's not about expecting the t-shirts to be folded like they are at the Gap. It's really about empowering them, letting them know that they're not only important to the wellness of the family, but that they are trusted,
Yes.
you know, and it builds their confidence. You know, my little one started little, he's taller than me, but he's my younger one, and he took responsibility for laundry folding a number of years ago, and he started just with the cleaning cloths,
Yeah.
the little square cloths, fold this way, fold that way, stack them up, done, right? He started there. But the muscle builds. And as they see what they're capable of, and also as they see Sherry, like, it doesn't take that long actually, and it's not that hard. And also, my kid knows that he's allowed to watch Premier League soccer highlights while he's folding. Like, why wouldn't I want to make it fun for him, right? Now he folds everything. Now he knows how to fold a fitted sheet by himself, which nobody
Whoa.
knows.
No, he gets a star for that one.
Big star for that. But like, but so it's, you know, just to reiterate, this is so impactful for them. And as parents who maybe are like a little bit more on the type A side of things,
Yep.
it is a learning and an effort for us to let go of some of these tasks, right? To give them to the kids who are not going to have like the same intensity that we may have when we're doing it. But I will say I have grown so much in that regard, right? And you know, what's more important is A, my connection with my kid, and B, that they are growing, then that all the folding is like perfect.
I like your perspective that you're not aiming for perfection. It's just that's the skills and the mindset and the muscle reps that
The
you're doing.
muscle.
So, Lori, I honestly could chat with you all day as a
I
fellow mom who has we've had similarities, right? Career, working at home, which I still agree with you is undervalued.
know.
It's well noted that a clean, orderly environment is critical for your mental health, and healthy home cooked meals are critical for your physical health. But yet, we undervalue, go figure. But more importantly, as a mom with kids, if you could leave me and anyone else who is able to listen to this, the two tips, one for the parents, what's the one thing
Yeah.
to do, and one from the child perspective, what's the one mindset to consider? What would you share?
So I'll start with the kid. One technique that I find really powerful with kids is talking to them about the why behind the work. This is so much more than just, a list of to-dos, a list of chores. There's really meaning behind everything we're doing. Like, first of all, it's the work of nurturing and nourishing a family and protecting our investments, right? All the things that we've spent money on that we have to maintain and adhering to community and municipal standards, right? Like, why do we have to take the garbage out on Tuesday? Like, what's it all about? And the one example that I love to give is, if I were to say to my teenagers, oh, you have to change your sheets. Well, that's annoying. I mean, it is. It's a big task and the sheets are so kind of tricky and complicated and it's maybe a little bit dreaded. But when I say to my teenage boys, hey, I'm not sure if you know this, but sleeping on a clean pillowcase facilitates clear skin. So I think it will be really meaningful for us to change your sheets, once a week, would you say? Then it takes on a whole different patina.
Yeah.
They understand there's a reason and that the reason is to benefit them directly. So giving them the context for why we're doing this task can be really meaningful in their engagement. And then the last thing that I want to say to parents and mostly to mothers, based on the research that I quoted, is, depletion is not a virtue.
Mm.
Parenting is not, you're not a good parent because you have emptied yourself in service to others. Understand the difference between being a mother and being a care provider, which is not solely the work of mothers. And when the care part feels too heavy, just focus on your connection with your kid, and that is good enough.
Oh wow. I actually I felt tearful there because people don't often tell you, give yourself grace, focus on the priorities. Because yes, I'm a bit like you. My dishes are not done, and you cannot eat off my kitchen floor. It's okay. I don't aspire to eating off the kitchen floor. Lori, you're brilliant. I'm actually really awed by, like, seriously, it's a beautiful, beautiful children's book. I also didn't mention the fact that not only is the messaging beautiful, but the inside, the illustration, the diversity of the
Um,
family. I actually wish I had this book when I was a child because I didn't see many families that reflected my diverse family.
yeah.
And so that actually is just another bonus. You put so much thought and care and love and passion. So thank you. My goodness.
Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot.
You're welcome.